go. Welcome back to the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast. We're getting close to episode 900 now. It's getting there. Really getting there as a surprise look on my guest page. We've got a really good, legendary guest, legendary referee in the business. Has refereed some great bouts over his time. We're going to get into that a lot more. It's former WWE referee, Mr. Jimmy Korderas. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you? And 900. Wow. That's a milestone, man.
It's nearly 900. It's and that's since 2023. So I mean that's like review shows and not just interviews, but it's a combination of bits. But yeah, you put it all together, I think it's like 800 and so and so. So we're getting there.
Oh yeah.
We
Well, let me know when the 1000 one comes up.
Oh, we will. Yeah, we're trying to do a little bit for that, but we certainly will let you know. I might even get you to do a little congratulations piece or something for us when we get there.
Yeah,
We're close.
you may be able to coerce me.
We may do, but Jimmy, obviously, thanks for coming on as well. It's a really pleasure to talk to you and someone that's had a lot of history within wrestling. Even as a look, referee, people don't actually understand how important actually a role a referee actually plays. It is about you assisting the wrestlers telling the story, isn't it, while they're in the ring?
It, that's one of the misconceptions about refereeing. All they do is they go in there and pretend to referee and count three. There's a lot more to it. The referee is the conduit that helps the talent tell their story. It's
Mhm.
not about us. We're there to help them tell their story and help facilitate the perception that it is an athletic contest. That's what wrestling has been from day one. Is people forget that yes, we know it's a predetermined outcome. The cat's out of the bag. The curtain's been pulled back. There's no hiding it now. But
What?
at the same time, yeah, at the same time, I think what's being lost right now is fans are forgetting to be fans and just sit back and relax and have that suspension of disbelief. Now everybody wants to be an analyst. Everybody wants to be critical. Everybody wants to say, well, the storytelling and the blah, 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 that's the frustrating part for me. I'm getting on a tangent on something else now,
That's
but
fine.
the referee's role again is to help communicate with the talent back and forth, whether something needs to be like one talent might say to a referee, oh, tell him to do this.
Mm.
I'm getting a message in my earpiece from the back saying, okay, we have to cut some time. Tell them we got to go short. We've only got 4 minutes left, whatever the case may be. Um, and you're there to help them tell their story without uh, being very visible. If that makes any kind of sense, you're the background player and you try to be as unnoticed as possible, but at the same time appear to be enforcing rules,
Yeah.
if that
Yeah.
makes any kind of sense. Will give you a quick story. After
Yeah.
WrestleMania 24, um, I'm always critical. I'm my own worst critic when it comes to
Mm.
my work. And after WrestleMania 24, I got to the back and I ran into one of my idols, Ricky Steamboat, who's a producer slash agent at the time. And he said to me, Jimmy, great job on the bump where Undertaker gave me the big boot. And I
Mhm.
said, thank you. That means a lot. But how was the rest of the match? What did you see? Did you see anything? And, I was looking for a critique.
Yeah.
And he said, you know what? I apologize. I'm sorry, but I didn't notice you during the match because the match was telling such a great story. I was enthralled with that. And I said, thank you, Ricky. That's what I want to hear. That was the best compliment you can give me. And when I tell people that, people don't get it. They said, but
Mm.
he didn't notice you. I said, yeah, exactly. I'm not supposed to be noticed. It's not about, I haven't sold a ticket in the 20 plus years I was with WWE. No one ever bought a ticket to see me. The only ones that came to see me were the people who got comps, my family and friends, and that's it.
No, exactly that, and you're right. You should like, and you're right. People are too way overcritical about wrestling nowadays. Over analytical, I think is the great word. Just quickly on talk side note before we get back to your good self. Obviously, WWE literally just debuted on Netflix like 12 hours ago or whatnot. How like monumental was that? I mean, you've been there through quite a lot of eras in wrestling as well as you said, 20 plus years. You went through quite a bit. Obviously, yeah, a bit about the Attitude Era, Ruthless Aggression, and so on and so forth. How big of an era is this for the WWE now, the Netflix era?
I think it is very much groundbreaking. As someone who's, if I may say, an old fart,
Yeah,
I'm the traditional TV guy. I tune into
yeah.
TV. I'm not a streaming guy. Every once in a while, I might get on there and look at something that some pops up on my feeds on social media and say, "Oh, you got to watch this," and I'll go and watch it, when I have the time, that's convenient. But as far as the Netflix thing, WWE has truly become a global brand right now, and I'm not here to pump their tires. I don't have to. They're doing it already. What they've done is very instrumental. People talk about WrestleMania being a big deal. The first WrestleMania, without that, we wouldn't have what we have today.
Mm.
And that's a very fair point. That being said, this you talk about the evolution of the business, and people lose track of the fact that, okay, the evolution of the business side of the business, not what goes on in the ring. People want to evolve the style, whatever the case may be, but the evolution of the business to get more eyes on the product and get people and remove that stigma that's been associated with pro wrestling for so long, with so many people. Oh, that wrestling, that wrestling stuff. Now it feels like just another form of entertainment, especially on Netflix, where it's global now, it's worldwide. 80% of the world gets to watch if they want to tune in.
Yep.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And of course, the money that they're making off it, is goes without saying. But you know, you might hook some people now who understand that they see stars, not only the past stars from our industry, but also stars from the music industry, stars from actings, a lot of actors, a lot of pro sports athletes who are big wrestling fans. When they see these people, they go, okay, maybe this isn't what I thought it was. That misconception, but this is a game changer. It really is, and hopefully other companies can learn from this and piggyback off it in some form or fashion where they could grow their audiences as well, because like they say, rising tides lift all ships.
Yeah.
And when the business is doing good, others can benefit from it as well, and that's what I'm hoping for, at least.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned about other companies there. How important is it that not that other companies, well, that more importantly, other companies like AEW, TNA, NWA are actually around? Because obviously, look, you went through a stage where it was a WCW, then there was nothing. What there was nothing. There was Ring of Honor, and there was TNA. TNA have had their dip a little bit, coming outside of that now. But how important is it for wrestling that there is other alternatives like AEW and TNA and NWA around for wrestlers to be able to maneuver around to?
That's the biggest thing. It gives wrestlers the talent somewhere, options to work and make a decent living, instead of like I hate to put it this way, toiling in the indies. That's not toiling. That's really earning your stripes, is what it is.
Mm.
And for superstars who were in the show, as they say, and you know, not everybody stays there for life. Unfortunately, people get released, and for whatever reason it is, whether it's just a numbers thing, whether they creative has nothing for you, or whatever the reason is. But having somewhere like an AEW, which guys can go to and make a great living, having TNA making a bit of a comeback now, I like to
Yeah.
see that. I like seeing that as well. NWA, there's others here in the United States and in the UK over where you
Yeah.
are that are doing well in the
Mhm.
indies, because they're feeding off this. Yeah, you can. I'm trying to find the right words without saying it's because of WWE, but
I know
because
what you mean.
WWE's exposure is so big, people are starting to notice other promotions outside. Let me give you an example, and I guess this is going off on a tangent. You take someone like a JBL,
Yeah.
who is a huge name in the WWE, big star. He's popping up in smaller promotions
It's
everywhere. And
yeah.
all he's doing is walking in, clothesline somebody, and leave. And it's a big deal. So I love that they're giving back, especially WWE now, who is, you know, returning to their roots, recognizing other promotions, which never would have happened under the Vince McMahon era.
Yeah.
They're mentioning them on their television program when they say, "Oh, so and so came from this promotion," and
Mm.
people go, "Oh, okay, let me check them out." You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
a trickle down effect, and I like that.
It's interesting, even WWE had a partnership with TNA over the last year or so. I mean, that is something that I wouldn't. I mean, no, ECW did show up on Raw a couple of times, and we know obviously WWE did end up buying ECW. But in terms of like having, I would never have dreamt that TNA and WWE would have come together the way that they have done so successfully as well, because it gives it. Also, it gave the importance of the TNA, sorry, the NXT stars that went down to TNA to get to work with some of their more experienced guys, which ultimately helped them out for when they get ultimately, hopefully, called up to the main roster.
Yeah, especially getting to sit there under the learning tree of people like a Shawn Michaels, like a Matt
Mhm.
Bloom, and all the coaches down there at NXT. It's a big help. And also it's an education. You take someone like an AJ Styles for all those years, great talent, ROH,
Yep.
TNA, and everybody said one of the best in the world. And he will tell you himself that once he got to NXT and he started listening to the coaches there, he said that's when the light bulb went on. That's when
Mm.
it clicked because he was phenomenal, no pun intended, or maybe pun intended. Then he could do anything in the ring, but that's when he realized it's more than what you can do in the ring. It's what you can do as far as a character, as far as getting people invested in you for who you are, as opposed to what you can do.
Mm.
You, if that makes sense.
Yeah, total sense. It does. It makes a real good sense. And he's obviously gone on to have a great career in the WWE. Coming back to you, I've got an interesting question. I don't know how many times you've been asked it, but when they do a draft in the WWE now, not necessarily with the wrestlers, but with the referees,
Hmm.
how is that for you? Because obviously travel can change like that. Do you get informed ahead of time, or is it something like, oh, now you're now drafted to SmackDown, you're now going to be Raw, that's it?
Well, they give us a little bit of a heads up. Fortunately, once they did the official brand split with Raw and SmackDown,
Mm.
I got assigned to the SmackDown brand and
Yep.
was there and didn't get,
Yes.
you know, go back and forth.
Nope.
So I unfortunately had the pleasure of riding with Tony Chimmel for all those years, but but I guess it is tough because well, it was different for the referees that worked on the ring crew as well
Mm.
because you traveled with the others on the ring crew, so
Yeah.
that was simple. If you're one of the referees that weren't on the ring crew, then you traveled with whatever talent you know how it is. You buddy up with somebody
Yep.
and you do to share expenses and that sort of stuff. So I could see that, but yeah, you got to find the right partners to travel with. You know what I mean? Because sometimes there are long drives in between towns, and you guys got to put up with each other. It's almost like family members.
Yeah, it can be, especially some of the drives are like 4, 5, 6 hours from town to town. So it was obviously never easy. When you got to the ring and you found out who you were reffing, is there anyone that you got there and you felt, oh, this is going to be like a night off in the ring wise?
Um, well, yeah. Guys like Eddie,
Yeah,
even though you had to work with him, there was a lot of work involved with Eddie. But
yeah,
at the same time, you know, once you got to work with him for a little bit, you almost got a feel for him because there were certain tells for me, at least, anyways, where I go, okay, I know where he's going with this.
yeah,
So, I didn't have to worry about it. There are other superstars you work with where you get a little nervous. I always got not because I was afraid. People
mm,
don't get this wrong. Always got a little nervous working matches with the Undertaker, only
mm,
because he was our locker room leader. And
yeah,
as I tell people all the time, he didn't anoint himself as the leader. The locker room anointed him as the leader.
mm,
And that's how much respect he had. So I always wanted to uh, perform my duties uh, in a way for him. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Make sure that I did it right. And it's not that I didn't feel the same way for other talents. I did it pretty much for anybody I walked in the ring with, but there was a kind of increased level of that when I walked in the ring with the dead man.
Can I ask? I mean, I know obviously I've been to there, I've been to WrestleManias, I've been in the arena when it's happened, but what is it like being in that ring when that gong hits and you see that man walking very slowly, but
Mhm.
walking down to the ring and that whole performance that comes with it? I spoke to Matt Cardone and he was like, there is nothing ever like it in the wrestling business.
No, there isn't. I mean, like you get the Rock, his
Yep.
infamous music, you get the glass breaking, and all due respect to Steve, that's an incredible feeling as well. but with the entire pageantry in the cinema, when you see the lighting, the way that it's staged, and that gong, there's something about that gong
Yeah.
that once you feel it, you get shivers. You
Mm.
know, The Rock always talks about goosebumps. This is more than goosebumps. It shivers up your spine when you get it, and you get like whatever it is, 60, 70, 1,000 people just erupt. I mean, even this past WrestleMania 40 in Philadelphia,
Yeah.
uh, nobody expected it.
No.
Everybody was expecting the glass to break.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
It was
was
like,
expecting I was expecting the
yeah.
glass to break, but when the gong hit, it was that if there was a roof on that place, they would have blew it off.
Yeah. They
But
would have
so,
done.
but standing in the ring and witnessing that, it's almost like you forget everything that's going on around you. You're absorbing this energy, and then you go, "Okay, I got a job to do. I got to get back to this." But holy moly, what a moment! When you say it's incredible, it doesn't describe it. It's an understatement.
Yeah, it is, and it is incredible to watch. I mean, it's incredible to watch sitting in a seat. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Being in a ring, I could never imagine it being obviously being in there. Is there any other interests? I mean, you've mentioned The Rock, you've mentioned obviously Stone Cold, and maybe even Triple H with the game when that used to
Mm-hmm.
hit. But is there any other ones that perhaps are surprising that that you like when you're in the ring and you're like, oh, this guy's coming out?
Mm. Uh, I don't know. Sometimes you can go back and look at. Um, I keep mentioning Eddie because I don't think Eddie gets his flowers enough
Yeah,
for how good he was and how over he was and how much people loved him.
yeah,
Obviously when he was a heel, he was a dastardly heel, and
he
people,
was.
bought into that. But when he was the lie, cheat, and steal version coming out in the lowrider, and people loved it.
Yeah.
And when you heard the Viva la Raza, again, people erupted, and it was great. Who else's music? You Think You Know Me?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Edge.
Mm,
I've got enough Edge
yeah,
tattoos to. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
there's just so many of them. People don't realize how much entrance music plays such an integral part of someone's presentation and their just their entrance, because their entrance is so important. It's like a show, like anything else.
Mm.
How you start off a show, an event, whether it's television, whether it's Raw, SmackDown, Dynamite, WrestleMania, whatever you want to call it, how you begin the show is so important because you want to grasp that audience. And that's the same with someone's entrance music. When you get someone's entrance music and the people are there right away, it's almost like you're coasting from there.
Yeah, we had the AEW guy that does it, Mikey Ruckus, on, and he was telling us about that. It's a phenomenal thing, and it does play an intricate part in the character
Mm-hmm.
as well. And you need to, it's like that first beat, and you're like, uh-oh. I remember
Yes.
one that does me, and it always done me for two reasons. One, because it scared the life out of me, was Kane's, because the pyro used to go straight off at that time when the pyro,
Yes.
especially when you don't expect it. There's been a
Yeah.
few times we come over here in the UK on a Raw show, and it was when Snitsky had killed his baby. And he yeah, I know,
Yeah.
wacky.
Yeah.
And they done an interview with Snitsky, and he followed it. The line was, the end of the line was, the only thing dead around here is your baby. And the arena just was like, oh. And then this four-way tag, I think, started off in the ring. So we're all watching the ring, and then that explosion goes off in the background. And I'm very funny with that. I just leapt out of my seat. But it's things like that, like Kane's one. Has Kane's one ever caught you off guard?
Yeah. Oh no. Uh no, just not off guard in the sense where I didn't know it was coming. I knew it was coming, but I forgot it was coming. You know what I mean? That sort of
Yeah.
thing. The other thing we had to worry about with Kane was, if you remember his entrance, where he'd come to the ring and he'd lift his arms and then he'd
Yep.
bring him
That
down,
the
and the
yep.
corner post would do the,
Yep.
because we stand in the corner during entrances to stay
Yes.
out of the shot as best as possible, stay,
Yep.
lay out, as they say. When he did his entrance, we'd have to kind of remember, okay, shift over. You don't want to get hit by that pyro. You know what I mean? I'd always try to shove Chimmel back in the corners, hopefully, but anyways. Yeah.
He had a great thing for Edge though. That the entrance for Edge was great that Chimmel done.
Yeah, because that was great, because on house shows or live events, as they call them now, we used to have fun and
Yeah.
used to, joke around. And Edge told him, you got to come up with something cool. And he did. And he did it on the house show. He said, oh, you're doing that on TV. He says, yeah, but I don't want to get in trouble. He says, no, you won't get in trouble. Do it on TV. And that's how it all started. It's all started at
Brilliant.
the house show.
That was great. I loved it. I still think it's great to this day. When he last done it was spectacular.
Mhm.
Refereeing a Royal Rumble, is that one of the hardest ones to do because there's so many bodies and things can go wrong? I mean, the Batista John Cena one was ones that
Mm,
actually was great because it actually went wrong, but it was went wrong for the right reasons. But how difficult is it to referee that, or do you just get a standing point and you just got to watch out?
You got to move around a lot because obviously you're getting signals and signs from the back.
Hmm.
So you got to try and relay it to the talent without being so overt in doing
Yeah.
so and letting the audience know, okay, he just told him something. He just told him something. You know, you
Hmm.
wait for somebody to maybe to be selling by the ropes and you kind of go over and you um, act like you're checking on them.
Yeah.
But in the process, you're kind of passing off a signal or whatever the note is from the office or whatever from Gorilla. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, but they got smart after a while. Where, like you mentioned, the infamous John Cena
Yeah.
Batista one, we had four referees out there,
Yeah.
so you got all four sides covered. So everybody kind of gets assigned a side. You know, stick to your side and do your best. But
Hmm.
originally, when they had two referees, it was like, okay, now we're jogging around the place, and like I say, you want the referees not to be a distraction. When you see this head running around the outside of the ring, you know, you're watching the action. You go, what was that? No, you don't want that.
No, I've got to admit that finish to that road is still to this day probably the way that they just, it was worse. It was like a happy accident because they absolutely landed spot on. You couldn't call it either way.
No, and if that had been the original, they couldn't have done it any better if they had planned it. It was so because you know obviously the finish they did later on,
Yeah,
the finish that they were hoping for, but because you had so many guys in there and everybody's leaning against the ropes trying to throw each other out, everybody's oiled up and sweaty.
yeah.
The ropes get they get slick, so
Mm.
when they went over the top, Dave was supposed to hang on, but he just couldn't. And then they landed, and yeah, I'll tell you. And when they landed, everybody went. The four of us on the outside all went, "Oh!" So Jack Dolan, the referee, instinctively went over and raised Dave Batista's hand
Yeah,
because he was supposed to win the Royal Rumble.
yeah.
All of a sudden, we get it buzz in our ear. I guess somebody watched it back in the truck and said, "Damn, they landed at the same time." So we get it. One of the SmackDown referees go and raise John Cena's hand. So I was the closest one. So I went over and I raised John Cena's hand. And right then I I clued in. This is what they want to do. They landed
Yeah.
pretty much. So we're arguing, no, he won. No, Cena won. No, Batista won. We were going back and forth. And while this is going on, I'm hearing in my earpiece, okay, the other refs, somebody go find Teddy Long and Eric Bischoff, the respective general managers for each brand. Get them here because we want to send them out there so they could argue and restart the match and that sort of stuff. So while this is going on, we're doing the background. No, he won, raising arms. All of a sudden, here comes Vince
Yeah.
tearing. Now, there's a difference between the Mr. McMahon character and we saw Vince come out,
Hmm.
a pissed off Vince. You can tell he was not happy because I think he didn't want to be the one to go out there. So as he dives under the bottom rope, obviously, he
Yeah.
goes to stand up and he lands right on his butt. And we're all like, what the heck is going on here? And he's like, get over here. And he starts barking instructions. We still don't know why he's sitting there and not getting up. As we found out later, he had torn both quads
Yeah.
in the process of diving under the rope and trying to stand up. But the amazing thing about it is when he rolled out of the ring to get to the back, you know, obviously some security guys and everybody
Yeah.
tried to help him, and he shoot them all away, and he managed to get to the back on his own. I don't know how he did it with two torn quads. You know, say what you will about him, but he just didn't want to look weak in front of anybody.
Yeah. It was I remember going to a show that Edge he done like a one night show over here and he said when he saw him land he's like oh shit
Yeah.
they're together and then the things about as we mentioned about the Vince stuff but being around obviously you've had some great returns and some stuff at the Royal Rumble some maybe like the John Cena one when he come back
Mhm.
really from injury. I mean, and I think I remember him saying that there was literally about two people that actually knew, or two or three, maybe four, that actually knew about it. Has there been any like that at the Royal Rumble where you were like, hang on a minute, why is he why is he here? Or do you guys get
No,
clued up?
I'm trying to think back, but thinking back to the John Cena one, I know exactly which one you're talking about, the one that was at Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
exactly that. Yeah.
funny because I was one of the referees, but I happened to be before the match walking. There was this. I had a bad habit of smoking. I used to smoke cigarettes.
Yeah,
I fully admit it. I'm reformed. I've quit. I don't even
good.
have the urge to do it. But there was a place at Madison Square Garden where the local crew, the union crew, used to go hide and smoke cigarettes. It had a big window because you weren't allowed to smoke indoors,
Yeah.
but it had this big window that used to flop open, and they'd go in this and they'd hide in there and smoke. And we were welcomed in there. So I went with my little spray bottle so I didn't smell like cigarettes all over the place. And I went into the room and I had a cigarette and I was walking out and this car had pulled up and someone got out that they had kind of covered up.
Yeah.
But I looked down and I saw the sneakers and I go, oh. And then I thought to myself, I better not say anything. You know what I mean? So I knew enough to keep it quiet, but uh, I was tipped off. So if there were two people that knew, then actually there were three because I knew.
Yeah.
I just
Three
didn't
or
know when. I just didn't
yeah.
know when.
When he was coming out. Amazing.
Yeah.
Is there you mentioned before that you'd get things in your ear about cuts time short and stuff like that. And obviously we've seen injuries that have happened in wrestling when you've been
Mhm.
when you've been officiating, but just officiating in general.
Mhm.
How is that? I know it's sort of kind of like communicate. I know sometimes you throw up the X and stuff like that, but
Right.
has there been one that stands out for you when you've been wrestling and the injury has happened when you've been there and you're like, is there some point where you get a bit lost or anything like that at that time, or you've just got like, oh my God, I need to let the guys know at the back and go from there?
No, it's like you said, you do your best to put a signal up there. The X, everybody knows the X now
Yeah.
is the signal. Referees now have the talk back button, so they
Oh,
can
okay.
check and now they can talk back to Gorilla and say,
Ah, okay.
okay. The main thing is, especially with the old school guys whose mentality is, regardless of how hurt I am, the show must go on.
Yeah.
You got to convince them to stay down. That was the
Yeah.
thing. You got to tell them, stay down, relax. Um, I'm trying to think of specifics, but nothing's coming to mind. But there were a few times where I've had to tell guys, you know what? Give it a minute,
Hmm.
relax, take it easy, take a breath, breathe, something like that, and then go back to the whoever he's working with and tell them, okay, give him a minute. Let's see if he's okay. If he's not okay, we're stopping.
Yeah.
And sometimes they would be okay. Okay, I'm cool. I'm good. Everything's good. We had little telltale signs that we used to use
Yeah.
to check and make sure that they were, aware and with it. If you know what I mean.
Hmm.
So your job is to assess it. Now there's a um, of course, as time progresses, they have someone, a medical, um, from the medical team,
Yeah.
ringside. So if they need anything, he's right there,
Yeah.
to check on things. But we had to, of course, not trained, but
Hmm.
learn to recognize signs.
Yeah.
You know, you
Yeah,
know.
exactly that. I think Triple H was the kind of few that stood out when he done both of his quads, didn't he? And he done one with the Jericho and he kept on and he took the thing on the table,
when they
right?
when they collided knees, right? No,
Yeah, I
no,
think
that
no, it
was
was when
Mick.
he done the sledgehammer, wasn't it? Across when Jericho had the walls of Jericho on.
Yes, yeah, because the other one was with Mick when they collided knees, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Yep,
Was
yep.
it one of the spine buster with Randy Orton?
Um, I'm
He
trying to
done.
remember.
I thought he done
I've
the
taken
second one when he done the. It was I mean, it was a spine buster. I thought it was on Randy or Edge. I could be wrong. I thought this was maybe
no,
I'm wrong, but I thought it was the
no.
second
You're probably right. I've taken too many ref bumps, so
one.
I've
Ref
definitely
bump.
forgotten more than I remember.
Need to talk about ref bumps because they happen quite often now.
Mhm.
Has there
Mhm.
been one where you're like, that's hurt more than it should have done? Kind of thing.
It's really weird because when you take a ref bump, and my philosophy for taking ref bumps is it shouldn't look like you're trained to take a bump.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
Yeah.
if a referee flat backs, people will go, "Oh, look, he's been trained to do it." So it's got to look a little off, but you got to do it. Try to do it in a way as best you can without hurting yourself, um, and protect yourself as best you can. That being said, sometimes uh, I don't know how to put it this way. You feel it later
Yeah.
because you're so caught up in the moment, and you may land awkwardly, you may land hard. Someone might land on you. They're obviously a lot bigger than I am. Um, so and you feel it, but you don't feel that ouch
Yeah.
until later. And then later you go, oh man, that did hurt. I've had different things. This is video. I don't know if you can see little things
Yeah.
like my finger,
Yeah.
my thumb on this hand got
Mhm.
torn back to almost
Yeah.
my, you know, but I have knocked myself out, which was a lot of fun because Jimmy Hart apologized for like years afterwards, and it wasn't him. I did it to myself. WrestleMania 4 with a megaphone. He was supposed to pop me with a megaphone, and when I
Yeah.
went to face plant down, my hand shot out, and my chin hit the canvas and just hit the
Yes.
sweet spot.
Yeah.
And that's all. After that, it was lights out. And he
Wow.
just gave, "Hey, Jimmy, baby, I'm so sorry." And I'm like, Jimmy, you didn't do it. I did it to myself. It's okay.
Brilliant. We're gonna wrap up in a sec, Jimmy. It's been great. But do you have
No
a
worries.
favorite
No worries.
match? Do you have a favorite match that you've refereed or a top sort of three that in your head?
Oh man, obviously WrestleMania 24, Edge and
Yeah.
Undertaker. It's the main event of WrestleMania. It doesn't
Yeah.
get bigger than that. And also the fact that I wasn't originally scheduled to referee that match.
Oh.
Um, I ended up working that match, and again, not to pat myself on the back, but requested by Edge and Undertaker
Yeah.
to do that match, which is a big deal. Which, for me, obviously, put a little more pressure on me, but it's okay.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that. Um, SummerSlam, SummerSlam 2002. Um, Kurt Angle and Rey Mysterio opened
Oh,
up the
great.
show,
Hmm.
and a lot of people say one of the best opening matches for any pay per view, which you know speaks volumes for them. But to be a part of that is really cool. To be a part of another SummerSlam match I did with Edge and Lance Storm,
Oh,
an all
yeah.
Canadian Intercontinental title match on
Yeah.
SummerSlam, which was kind of cool. And we were all joking about that in the back afterwards. Uh, Numerous ones with Eddie,
Mm.
just having fun. One of the favorite ones, believe it or not, that wasn't on television
Hmm.
happened in, I want to say it was Oberhausen, Germany, during one of our European tours. It was a tag match, Edge and Christian versus Jeff Jarrett and Owen Hart,
Oh, yeah.
which was class. And Owen was in rare form with his just making everybody laugh again. He would do these things like, um, for example, he would, splash. They were getting heat on Edge, and he would splash off the bottom rope. He would dive off the bottom rope and splash his ankles and cover his ankles and yell at me to count. They would do all these crazy things. They did the spot um, where he had a foreign object.
Yeah.
He would use the foreign object when I was distracted, and we'd go through the whole process of he'd pass it back and forth with Jeff Jarrett and hide it from me until it came time for me to catch him. And he had it tucked under his arm, and with the count, I forced him to raise his arm,
Yeah.
and a napkin comes floating out. He was using a napkin as a foreign object, and then when the baby faces, Edge and Christian, were doing the comeback, they had them in opposite corners up on the ropes, get ready to do the 10 punches. And when they looked up in the crowd, they reached into their trunks and they pulled out these little red clown noses and put them on so that when they looked down to do the 10 punches, they broke out laughing. And when they popped off, I picked them up. I still have them to this day. I kept
Oh,
them.
wow.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite souvenirs too, having those clown noses from that match. I've just been blessed to be a part of so many great matches, and you know, uh, people are saying, would you ever come?" No, I'm content.
Mm.
I'm content. If the right circumstance come back for one match to do something, never say never. It's the wrestling business, but at the same time, like I said, I've been blessed, and I'm quite happy with what I've accomplished, and now getting to stay home with my wife. She's the one who put up with all those years of traveling where I was
Yeah.
hardly home. you know, and now she's sick of me and wants me to get on the road again, but it's not happening.
One last thing, Hall of Fame, right? Should
Mhm.
referees should be in the Hall of Fame, right? And would you accept that honor if it was bestowed upon you by the WWE?
Um, absolutely would accept it, but I think there's a few that deserve the honor before me.
Hmm.
I look back at, of course, my mentors,
Yeah,
like the both Hebners, Dave and Earl.
yeah,
God bless Dave. Um, I believe they deserve a spot in the Hall of Fame. I believe someone like a Tommy Young also deserves a spot in the Hall of Fame, even though he wasn't really WWF/WWE. He was um, one of the greatest of all time, if not the greatest. Tommy Young was fantastic. Um, Obviously Timmy Whitey's in the
yeah,
Warrior wing of the Hall of
Mhm.
Fame.
Yeah,
Teddy Long is in,
yeah.
but
He
he's
is.
in because of his overall,
Yeah,
personas as a
manager,
manager
general
and all.
manager. Yeah,
Exactly. So he has he wore more hats as far as
yeah.
in front of the camera. So, but it would be nice to acknowledge the referees because, like we talked about earlier, they're such an integral part of the presentation of pro wrestling. I think it would be nice to acknowledge their contributions.
It certainly would. And as we wrap up now, Jimmy, what about your podcast? Tell us about that. What's it got going on with that?
Oh, myself and my old partner Brian Hebner there, my good brother in stripes, and now we're bringing on a new member to our
Oh,
podcast. It'll be a three-man booth. Daniel Spencer, who is the head official of TNA, will be
wow.
joining us on our podcast this year, and it's a lot of fun. We talk about pretty much everything. We have guests on. We critique. We talk about what we like, what we wish was done better. And again, it's one of those things where we're not trying to bash anybody. We're just trying to, say, I wish it was done this way. At least it's an opinion, so whatever. But we have fun with it. And also here in Canada, which I do a radio show with my good buddy Donnie De Silva on TSN Radio in here in Canada, but it's also available on our iHeart Radio and wherever you listen to your podcast called Huge Pop Radio. So having a blast with that and just getting to talk wrestling, which is still my passion, what I love.
Exactly that. And it's Reffing It Up podcast, right?
Reffing It Up, the podcast, and also Huge Pop Radio. And of course, on all my social media platforms, my Ref and Rants, which I'm having a blast doing, just having a little fun. You know, People take it a little too seriously. Come on, guys. It's wrestling. It's supposed to be fun.
It is indeed, Jimmy. It's been wonderful talking to you. I just want to say big thanks also, not only for coming on the show, but for your obviously contribution to wrestling. And it's always been massively important, referees, and your career in the WWE has been fantastic. So thank you for coming into our lives as well, for those years that you worked and for the service that you've done for wrestling.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the kind words. That means a lot. It really does.
Brilliant. And we'll see you down the road, guys. This has been the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast. He has been the one and only legendary Jimmy Korderas. I have been your host, Adam Cousins. And until next time, everybody, buckle down, stay safe, and good night.